Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Banks. I'm the Director of Sales at Clients First, and appreciate you taking time out of your busy morning to join us for kind of part two of the Sage Mass Intelligence presentation. We have Debbie Hill, one of the top sales engineers at Sage, with us again today that will be presenting and taking a little deeper dive into the product. Just a little bit of housekeeping before I turn it over to Debbie. We would like to make this interactive, although you are muted, so please use the chat window for questions that arise during the presentation. And again, we will be providing training workshops and additional workshops after this session to try to get you ramped up as quickly as we can on this solution. With that being said, I will turn the controls over to Debbie Hill, and Debbie will take you into the Sage Mass Intelligence product. Debbie?
Great, thanks, Jeff. So like Jeff said, I'm one of the sales engineers at Sage, and for those of you that were on part one of this session, I've already introduced myself. For those of you just joining us, I've been with Sage for 8 years now. I spent a lot of time in the technical support side. I supported Mass 90 along with the complementary products. I also supported FRX and F9. So the Sage Mass Intelligence product I'm very excited about, and at Sage it's a new product that's across all of our product lines. So it's not just Mass Intelligence, we're actually rolling this out worldwide. So we're really excited about this product. And now that we've had an introduction, like Jeff said, today's session is going to get us a little deeper into the product. So here's what we're going to take a look at. We're going to do some review about the workflow, the module and components, and then we're going to spend the majority of the time in the demonstration. So I do want to review the terminology, a lot of the components, so we know what we're looking at when we get into the demonstration. So first, starting with workflow, this will be a familiar diagram from last time, but just to reiterate how data flows throughout the Mass Intelligence solution. So what happens is you start with all these little bits of data. So each little data set here, again, that's any ODBC compliant data source. It's not just your general ledger financials. That's one of the biggest powerful points of Sage Mass Intelligence is that it's not just financials. So we've got all these different little data sets here. This goes to our connector module. And again, the modules and components we'll get into in just a moment, but this is how the data flows through. We get our pieces of information. It goes through our connector module. Security gets verified and validated. Then it goes to our report manager. And that's another component we'll become familiar with in the demonstration. The report manager is where we do all our fine-tuning, and that puts it out to Excel. And as you know, Sage Mass Intelligence, everything can be distributed via Excel. So unlike FRX, you don't need licenses to actually view the reports. All you need is Microsoft Office. But from Excel, the other functionality that we're getting that was not available in FRX or F9 standalone is the distribution capabilities. So we can now take our, we put it into Excel, we can publish it onto a web server, or we can actually have it emailed. It could be scheduled to generate and email, or we can actually just take a look at the Excel workbook on our desktop. So from a workflow standpoint, the data goes from any ODBC data source through our Sage Mass Intelligence product, and then you have a multiple distribution options. Another bit of review are the modules and the icons here. Report Manager, that's what we'll see in the demonstration. Report Viewer, we are not going to cover this today. We covered it last time. We've got Security Manager, License Manager, and then what we will get into is the connector and the Report Designer. So in a little more detail here, the Report Manager, this is what is replacing FRX. This is the trade-in or the addition to. The Report Viewer, we saw that last time. It's just like the drill down viewer in FRX. It allows you to generate reports based on different parameters, fiscal periods, dates, different criteria, but you can't change any of the reports. It's just viewing and generating reports. The report designer, we're going to spend a lot of time in this because this is an add-on module. And again, just like the math solution, when you add a module to math, for example, if you say you are going to start taking returns, so you want to add the return merchandise authorization module. You buy the module and every user has access to it. Again, permissions pending. But the SMI modules operate the same way. Whereas if you buy the report designer module, everyone who has permissions to it can access it. So it is an Excel add-in, and that's a module, and we're going to spend a lot of time on that today. The other module is the connector, and this is what gives you access to multiple different data sources, and you bring everything into Sage Mass Intelligence. So I've got another slide here on the connector just so we can, again, be familiar with the terminology and have an idea of what we're seeing, so when we get into the demonstration, it makes a lot more sense. Obviously, security, all of the ODBC driver rules and regulations apply from Mass to Sage Mass Intelligence. So if you don't have access to a specific division, you won't be able to pull reports for that division. All right, so one more graph here before we get into the demonstration. Here we have the components and report structure. So this is the connector module. Right now I have 3 different Mass 9200 data sets. And the reason why I have 3 that are all the same, they're all Mass, but when we start building our report and we start pulling our data, we don't want to pull the entire Mass database in. That's entirely too many files to go through. It's going to make everything very cluttered and lengthy to sort through. So what we do is we just pick little tiny bits of information that we need. So these 3 Mass files, this could be an inventory, an item maintenance file. It could be a customer file, the customer master file, we'll say, and a sales order file, sales order lines file. So you've got your 3 files, or again, any other ODBC compliant data source, not just Mass, but you pick the specific data files that you need. Then you go over to the connector module, and that's what the connector module does. It's going to pull different companies, different data sources, and you pick and choose which fields you want, and then you build a container. So again, I really want to get the terminology down so when we get into the product, it'll make more sense. But what happens is we take our very specific data fields and we build little containers. And again, that makes it easier to design reports because now you have only the specific information you need. You're not pulling the entire Mass database into this file. You're not pulling your entire inventory file into the report. You're just getting the information you need. You use the connector module to pick and choose tiny bits of information that you build into a little container. And then with that container, now you go to the report manager because now you have the selected fields that you need. And now the report manager, you put them in Excel. You put them in rows, in columns. You do your calculations, and you get all of the aesthetics that you like to see on your report. So this is the report structure using the connector, going to the report manager, and then again, as we know, the output is Microsoft Excel. And once again, your distribution options are still there, whether you want to put it on a web server, email it, or view it. Okay, so that is our components and report structure. For the demonstration, we have a couple options. There's an income statement, a standard report, and we're also going to take a look at pivot tables. So first thing was modifying an income statement. So this is an example that we actually had from customer feedback. This was the first task that I had actually been asked to do. And I'd also suggest you think of the reports that you are asked to compile on a weekly basis, monthly basis, any reports that you have to put together yourself. Anytime you find yourself exporting from Mass into Excel, think of those types of reports and then let clients first know exactly what data you're looking for, because we can get that data using Sage Math Intelligence. Okay, so example number 1, we're going to modify an income statement. You've been tasked to create an income statement showing the actual versus prior numbers for the first 2 quarters only. So this can make sense from a couple different options. Obviously with Math, you have periods, you have quarters, and depending on how you have your fiscal year set up, it can be challenging reporting off multiple different periods. So let's take a look at the Sage Intelligence tool, how we would do that. Here's our 4-4, and I do want to take a moment to point out there is this tell us what you think. And as the Sage Math Intelligence product, just like the standard Match product, as it grows and develops, as we go through these next versions and our product updates, please give us your feedback, because we take that feedback very seriously, and we want to make the product better for our customers and additional features that you need. We want to make sure your product is meeting your needs. So with that, we're going to actually go to our Business Intelligence module here. We talked about License Manager. That just determines how many licenses. And again, based on your needs, when you contact clients first, they can let you know what types of licenses you need, how many, etc. Security, we just mentioned that briefly. That goes and ties back to Math, so it's very tight with security parameters. We need to create an income statement. So let's take a look at our Report Manager here. Notice it's asking me to log in with my username and password, again because different security, different permissions. Now this is our Report Manager, and we're going to create an income statement. Now we do have our financials here under Designer, our Financial Reports Designer, but rather than making changes to the original template, I'm going to actually create my own folder, someplace that I can keep all my reports. And then I'm going to copy this folder, copy this report into my reports. Now this is a good business practice just in general. Always leave the main file or the original template intact. Maintain the integrity of that original layout. Anyone can go ahead and copy and make changes, but same thing with your Business Insights Explorer views, any other types of modifications you make. You want to make sure you still have the original template left intact so you can make the same changes. So we're going to actually rename this. I know what I'm looking at. This is going to be my half-year income statement. And I've copied it. So here we've got the option for the template. We want to assign it a new name and just duplicate it. I'm going to say yes. And all of these pop-ups with Sage Math Intelligence, it will give you the recommended option, and then you have your more advanced options. So just typical with software in general. Again, it's very intuitive with these setup options. So I'm just going to go ahead and generate this half-year report, income statement. Now I just copied the report. So my parameters that I have to fill out are the fiscal year and the budget code. Now we're not doing budgets, we're doing actual versus prior. But again, because I copied it, that's one of the parameters that's in the report. In just a moment, when we build our report for the first 2 quarters, we'll go ahead and remove that parameter so it makes a little more sense. But again, I'm not a big fan of recreating the wheel. I prefer to copy and modify things that have already been done. If you do prefer to build your reports from scratch, you can absolutely do that. We would just go and create a new report instead of copying a report. So depending on your Excel skill set that you have, depending on the resource that you might have within your company, different options for starting from scratch or just copying a template. So now we're in the Report Designer. You'll notice it says Financial Report Designer. It gives us a little blurb about it. I now have a new tab called BI Tools, my Business Intelligence tool. So now that I'm in the Report Designer, because again I've been tasked to design a new income statement, I'm going to launch my Report Designer tool. I'm going to load a layout. Again, you can create a new one from scratch. I'm going to copy my actual versus prior. So here's all of our layouts, balance sheet, trial balance. We're going to do income statement, actual versus prior. I'm going to copy this, and this is going to be our half-year income statement. And this brings up the Report Designer tool. So while this loads, it does appear to have a lot of boxes and a lot going on. But it's actually very, very straightforward. So we've got our columns up here. I'm going to clear these. Here's our columns, and here's our rows. Now, because I'm copying a layout, I'm going to keep all of these rows because this looks pretty good to me. Got my sales, my cost of sales, my gross profit, GP percent, expenses, income percent, etc. So all of these rows, I'm going to leave intact. Columns, on the other hand, that's what I want to change. So I've cleared them. Now I'm going to build my columns. I can put a number of different things. On the left-hand side here, we've got our fields for accounts, company code. Notice a number of different options here. These are just straight data fields. On the right, we actually have calculated fields. Obviously, activity quarter one, that's a calculation. It's 3 periods added together. So what our task was an income statement showing actual versus prior numbers for the first 2 quarters. So I'm actually going to use my calculated fields here. We're going to have activity quarter one, and here's prior year activity quarter one. Add a spacer. A spacer will be, in this case, it's a column, so it'll be a blank column to put a little window and a little gap in between these. And we're going to have activity quarter 2, prior year activity quarter 2. Really straightforward. Now, this report will only have 4 columns. We also need some other formulas. Say, because we're doing the first 2 quarters, say we want the actual total. So for activity quarter 1, activity quarter 2. We're going to have to create a new formula because we don't actually have that. If we look through, we have our variables, our percentage, year-to-date, prior, etc. We have a lot of formulas here, but we need to create a new one for this specific report. So I'm going to right-click and go to New Formula. And it's very straightforward, the actual total. So the total of 2 quarters. We'll scroll down to our activity. It's period 1 plus period 2, right, all the way through 6 periods. So 3. This is really straightforward, but you'll notice it's basic calculation. But because we didn't have this formula, it's very easy to build. You have your standard mathematical functions. And this is just one of the ways to get formulas into Sage Math Intelligence. If you're more versed in Excel and you would prefer to use your Excel formula skills, then absolutely go ahead and do that. This is just if you, as an alternative, you have this formula builder where you have your items and your functions, and you go ahead and create a formula this way. So this is our actual. Okay. And if we look down at the bottom, there's our actual total. So I'm going to add a spacer, actual total. And we need one more formula. And this is the prior total of 2 quarters, again, because everything we have is based on single quarters or periods. So we'll do our 6 periods here. And again, this is straight addition, so it's quite easy, but it can be as complex as you need it. This is our prior total. We'll add that. Okay, so what we've done, we copied our income statement layout, and that's why I left all the rows intact, because our gross profit percentage, etc. We're going to leave all those rows intact, but we needed to build an income statement with the actual versus prior. So that's what I've created. actual, quarter one, prior, quarter two, and then we built our formulas. So if we're doing any sort of budgeting, any sort of calculation, anything into the future, we're dealing with financial statements now. Hopefully you can see how quick and easy it is to just build a report. I'm going to go ahead and generate the layout. And it's pulling all my information, again, straight from the mass database. I'm using a single company code. You do have the option with multiple companies if we need to. I just have my one chart of accounts, ABC Company. So quarter one, quarter two, there's a calculated field and our prior total. So we went through the formula builder and used our formulas. We clicked on the plus sign, etc. It's very straightforward. But if you're more familiar, like I said, with Excel, then you can absolutely use all of those skills. That might be just a different option for you. So you have the formula builder. You have the option to use your standard Excel skills. And again, build the report any way that works for you. What's great about this is it is drilling down back to the general ledger. So if we did need to view any of the information, say we had this report open for maybe just a couple hours, maybe there's been some posting. If there's any sort of data that needs refresh, similar to F9, you have that refresh all. Instead of doing F9, though, it is Control-Alt-F5. So we can refresh the information, and that'll all be populated, again, as frequently as you need it. So we've built our report, and now we actually need to link the report back. So if we go back to our report manager, remember our half-year income statement, we did that copy. I'm going to go ahead and link it to the Excel sheet that we were just dealing with. We'll say, yes, that's okay. Half-year income statement sounds good. So what it's done now is it's making a copy of that template, and now every time I generate my half-year income statement, let's close Excel, that's the report that's going to pull up. Now, when we first logged in, remember we had those parameters where I had to fill out my fiscal year and my budget code? Because we copied the income statement layout, and budget was relative at that for that report. But with our income statement, our actual versus prior, budget's not really relevant. So I'm going to remove that from my parameters. We'll go back to our half-year income statement, and now we'll just take a look and run it. It's still going to ask us for our fiscal year, and it's going to pull up our exact report that we created. So using the report designer, using that Excel add-in, it makes it extremely easy to create and generate financial reports. Again, you can build from scratch if you have those Excel skills and you prefer to do that. But with the report manager, it really empowers everyone in the organization to go out there and, permissions pending, they can build the report that they need rather than tying up other resources. So now that we've got our half-year income statement, all of our other Excel rules apply. So if we wanted to do any sort of color grading or formulas, any sort of eliminating zeros, accounts with zero balances, that's also an option. Hide zero rows, drill down, all of your reports will still apply. Also with the consolidation, and you have your what-if analyzer. I know we talked about this last time. You can go with different values, kind of what would happen if we increase sales, what would happen if our expenses went up, etc. So you've got this what-if analyzer. But the main point, that's how easy it was to go ahead and create a new, entire new report. Okay, so that's what we did. We modified our income statement. We had that report, and we went ahead and generated it. Now, we can do a number of different things when it comes to output options as well, like we saw in the slides. We don't have to just email in Excel format. We can email that in a PDF. So if there is concern about people accessing a live workbook, where they can make modifications. They can change the data in the cells. There's a lot of different options. You can lock those cells down. You can password protect everything. Or the best way is just print it in PDF and email it out in that format. Okay, so now on the next one, we're going to create a standard report. So we're going to use the report manager again. We're going to build our container. We're going to set our columns, filter the data, and then talk about variables. So just like we saw in the report manager and just like we saw in that workflow, this is where the connector module is going to come into play when we talk about building our container. So let's go ahead and open our connector module. And once again, it's asking me to log in. This is because of security. If I'm logging into a different data source, say the CRM database, perhaps you're using Abra, perhaps you're using another non-Sage product, anything you're using can be listed on this connector module. So here's my enterprise. This is my entire server. And you'll notice all the different data sources. So any type of layout too. It's not just, it can be SQL, it can be pervasive. You can take SQL with pervasive and an access database. As long as it's ODBC compliant, you can pull them all into one container. That's what we're going to do. We're creating a standard report, and we're going to build our container here. Our container is going to exist from within the mass driver. We've got auto connect, and you've got your consolidation. This is our financial reports, again, where our consolidated financial reports are coming from. And let's just double-click on auto connect. Again, when we double-click, we're getting drilled down. So it's similar to the module tree, the tree view in Mouse. When you click on accounts receivable, then you have the main, reports, the period end, all those folders. When you click on main, it opens up into customer maintenance, invoice data entry, etc. So it's the same Windows look and feel, the same navigation. We've got our server, our enterprise-wide, everything that's out there. We've got our mass ODBC driver, our auto connect, and then these are the containers that are already built for us. So we just took a look at the financial reports. That's how we built our income statement. This has already been built for us. So everything in red comes standard. We're going to go ahead and build a new one now. So from our auto connect, I'm going to go ahead and add a container. Now on the container type, this is something that Clients First will really get into detail with you later when it comes to different container types, different ways of pulling data in. You've got your SQL join, your graphical join, and queries, among other things. And again, depending on your level of expertise, perhaps you don't need a tool to help you create this container. Perhaps you can actually write the code on your own. Now that being said, I'm actually going to just hop over to financial reports. And what I mean by creating your own container and doing a join, if you are versed in SQL code, this will make a lot of sense to you. Again, some of our customers prefer to type this in manually and create it on their own. Me, however, I do need the tools, and I do need help. I prefer a tool to help me create that code. So we're going to build a container. We're going to use the tools here in the connector module, and we're just going to pull data from a single table. Now remember before, when we had the chart and the 3 different Mass 90 boxes, that's because we don't want a huge long list of all of our files. You don't want to pull the entire mass database in this container because it's going to make it hard to sort through the data we really need. So when I select to add a new container from my ODBC driver, we have to pick the data that we want in there. And you'll notice, accounts payable, these are all of our mass files. This is everything in the entire mass database. Again, I'm using the mass ODBC driver. So let's scroll down to inventory, and I want to take a look at the inventory item customer history by periods. This will be a good file for us to take a look at. Now, while I'm talking about these files, if we scroll down, another really big advantage that Sage Mass Intelligence has over Crystal Reports is when it comes to building reports, with files that have similar file names. For example, job cost. This is one of the legacy modules. We still have some of the files and the old naming conventions. So JC, D, and E, they're both job billings data entry files. And if you're using job cost and you're using Crystal, you might have noticed or experienced some reporting mishaps, or it's actually quite difficult to pull specific reports. Well, all of these file conventions, that whole error is eliminated using Sage Mass Intelligence, just because of the way this is laid out. Now, I do get lots of questions about how do I know what information is where, and let's take a look at that now, because we have given you the file layout and program information. So although this might look a little confusing because it's all of the files, when I select my item customer history by period, I'm going to build this container right here. So how do I know what's in that file? There's two ways. First, let's go back to our mass, our resources, and our file layouts and program information. I'm going to get a few ActiveX just because of the environment I'm in, the demo environment. But we give you the file layouts and program information. So if you look at file layouts, our inventory management, and again, remember we took the item customer history by period. So this is the actual file we took, and look, this gives us the columns and the fields, the data that's actually contained in that file. So Clients First always does this for you behind the scenes, so there's always that option if you don't want to get into it this technical. You don't have to. Clients First is always there to do it for you. But if you feel a little adventurous or you want to get a little more familiar with the layout, this is just one way to find out where that information is stored. Let's go back to our connector module. I'm going to rename this. Again, remember, we rename the reports, we copy the reports, we make it easy so we know what we're looking at. I'm going to say item customer. And now let's go ahead and add the expression. So we built the container. It was very straightforward. We just picked that one data file that we wanted. But now that we have that one data file, let's take a look at what we actually need. So just like we saw in the Mass 90 file layout, these are the same fields. That inventory file, the customer history by period, this is the only data that's contained there. So I don't have to select everything, but we are going to use division number, customer number, obviously item, that's important, quantity, and dollar sold. Those are all important. So this is us building a report. We're selecting the data. We're making it easy to get specific fields so that when we do get to Excel, it's very easy to sort the information. We'll say OK. And again, I'm going to rename this. Sales, we'll say quantity, items, okay, and division, very straightforward. Okay, so one more thing while we're looking on these expressions, again, your SQL select statement down here. We've done all this using the user interface tool, but again, if you prefer to build this on your own, you can absolutely do that. So that's it. We built a container, we picked which data file we wanted, and we picked the fields that we're going to actually pull out on the report. So now, from our connector, I'm going to hop back to our report manager, and we're going to create yet another new report. It's a standard report. You can do standard or union. Now, union reports are very interesting because you can actually use an existing Excel report that you have, and you can merge the two. So if you're using F9 and you have some report layouts that you're very fond of that you want to keep, we would use those layouts and do a union report. If you receive Excel documents from your vendors, or from your customers, you can actually import those data sets into Sage Mass Intelligence and do a lot of analysis there. So when it comes to a union report, any Excel that you already have, any Excel worksheet, we can actually use that in Mass Intelligence. So again, just another thing to keep in mind of not only the Excel workbooks that you're using, but the ones you're getting from outside sources. So this will be my customer items report. And now that I've added a report, these are all the data containers that I've created. So by default, actually this is what you get straight out of the box. This item customer, this is the data container that we've created. So I'm going to say OK, but actually just take a look here at some of the other options that come out of the box. Your stock reorder, on hand and reordering information, your inventory quantities by warehouse, your customer invoices. These are the data container sets that are set up by default. So even without the connector module, this is what you get out of the box. With the connector module is where we can access a lot more information. All right, so we're creating a new report. These were the fields that I selected. Remember, we renamed them. I'm going to select them all for this specific report. And it's very straightforward as to how we're going to build this report. You've got your columns, customer number. Let's say we want to move these around. Oops, no, we want to move it up. Divisions, customer number, item code, quantity, sales. Our filters. This is definitely another option when it comes to filtering information. So we can say we're going to have divisions is greater than, or again, any of these operands. So a lot of different options. We're going to say it's greater than 0, 0. So we're only looking at specific divisions. This is also a very good security feature. So if you're going to build a report and you're going to have different people view it based on their role in the organization, you can add these filters and add these parameters so each role gets a specific data set. Parameters, again, remember when we were doing our income statement, one of the parameters was fiscal year and budget. So you can opt to have parameters. That, again, will just narrow down the data set that you're looking at. We're going to leave that blank. Sort fields, same thing. You can sort on any number. Let's say we're going to sort on customer number. And then aggregate filters, again, just another way. See some of the methods here. Just another way to narrow down that data set. All right, so let's just go ahead, though, and run our report. And remember, we only had very few select fields. We didn't add any parameters, which is why we're not being asked for any modification here. And here we get a very, very general list of information. So this, all of your Excel skills that you have, you can start playing around. You can start formatting in any way you like. One of the other features is also pivot tables. So now that you've got this report, Excel layout, you've got it the way you like it, now we can get into doing pivot tables. So let's just hop back to this slideshow for one moment. We created that standard report. We built a container, arranged the columns, and so very, very simple layout. Now I want to kind of change gears to pivot tables. And the reason why we use pivot tables, I use them because it's easier for me to look at pretty charts and graphs, and that's how I can make better business decisions. That's how I can view trends. Other ways of using pivot tables is obviously to sort the information, get through it quickly, and view the same data set a number of different ways. So there's our top reasons for using pivot tables. And now that we know why we do that, let's take a look at how easy it is to actually create a pivot table. So we're going to insert pivot table. This is standard Excel. Because I've got my report designer, I'm going to use our raw data. Okay. And now we can build our table. These are the fields, remember, that we had from our report. So we can actually say we want our rows to be items, columns are customer, quantity, quantity is a calculated value, and you drag and drop and you get this report. Now this is going to get, just based on our information, it's going to become more of an eye chart. You see how easy it is to actually create those. Let's go ahead and close out of this report, and let's actually use a proper pivot table. So let's take a look at our customer sales. I'm going to run this report. It's going to ask for a parameter here. Use May. I haven't closed out my books as I should be, so we're going back a few months. This is another one of the pivot tables that comes straight out of the box as part of the Sage Mass Intelligence. So again, I have mentioned before, it's not just financial information, it's also customer, inventory, and vendor information. So here's an example of a pivot table that has many more fields and can actually help you sort a large data set very quickly. For example, salesperson, we can look at just Jim's sales. You've got your product line. Anything that we decided to sort on, anything that we're on that sort tab, anything we select there will be brought here. Now when it comes to pivot tables as well, we've got our pivot table tools. This is part of the designer, that add-in, that Excel add-in. So we go to options and field list. So just like we had our drag and drop, we had our item and our customer or quantity, very, very basic. You can be as simple or as complex as you need. And the best part about having a tool like this is you can actually copy existing templates. So when we first started out with our income statement, you can copy things, move them around, and sort them the way you like. So with our customer pivot table here, look, there's customer name, number, item information. There's a lot of other data that we can add to this report simply by clicking and dragging and dropping. It's also a great way when you're getting started with pivot tables on what you want it to look like, how you want it to look like, in addition to all the training that you'll have, in addition to Clients First being a resource. It's always easy enough just to go ahead and copy what already exists. Okay, so that's our options here. I see we have a few questions, and we've got about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure we get to all those questions. Let's go ahead and hide our field list here. But again, it's standard Excel. Once you get the information out, you can drill down, build your pivot tables any way you like. We're not going to save those. One last thing I wanted to show that we touched on last time, we did see the dashboard. Let's take a look at it one more time. And just another example of the pivot tables, graphical representation of your data, another easy way for you to make your decisions. Those were our parameters that I just entered, again, depending how many parameters you require. And now we get our dashboard. So we'll take a look at our dashboard, and I do want to take you into the drill down functionality. We do have, just like F9, like I mentioned before, you have that live refresh. You have the refresh as well. And unlike FRX, FRX doesn't have that live refresh. You actually have to regenerate those reports. So here we've got our dashboard. Here, again, graphical representation of information. You've got your chart data. So if you want to do your own pivot table, again, you can do so. Again, I'm a fan of copying what we already have. So there's our dashboard. The last piece I wanted to talk to you about was the drill down information. So there's American Business. There's their top 5 customers, the items that they've bought. We can go ahead and drill down, and this is going to actually just launch a list of the items that American Business has purchased. So quite straightforward, a way to drill down into the detail information. And again, all these columns are all user-defined. So we talked about pivot tables, why we access those, why we want to sort on information. There are those built into the system. You can also build your own based on the data you need, or build them from scratch. So a lot of different options there. So like I promised, we're going to get to those questions. So let me summarize what we've seen today. We had we modified our income statement. We create by copying one of the financial layouts that already exist. We did our own list of data because we built a container, picked out the information we need, and had that exported to Excel. And then we talked about pivot tables and the charts, the way to view information, the way to sort through data. And we saw all that in the demonstration. So in summary with that, Sage Mass Intelligence, that is our new reporting tool. And it's for financial reports, but it does a lot more than that. Not only on the reporting side, but also on distributing those reports. If you have Excel skills or if you have an Excel expert in-house, if you don't have one you know of, then Clients First can be that for you. If you do have Excel skills, like we saw today, there's different ways you can build reports from scratch, or you can copy what's already there. So it's available right now for download on version 4.4. If you're not on 4.4, go ahead and give Clients First a call.